Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And may I take this opportunity to welcome you all. We started a little bit later than expected because we were waiting for our colleagues to finish on the other side of the town with the other briefing that was taking place there. And I hope you have had your tea, Heidi, your tea and water and stuff like that. But you're welcome, and I'm accompanying the Minister of Defense today. We're going to be sharing with you, or rather discussing with you, various aspects of work that we have been doing over the past couple of years with you before we move into the 7th administration. With that much said, I would like to invite the Minister to take us through on the statement that we've just distributed, and then we will have an engagement after that. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you very much. We have distributed the statement, so I propose that I just flit through it, not read it line by line. We thought that we should mark April, that 30 years ago, this month was very significant, but it was also very important in the realigning the security sector of our country and in beginning to set the pace for the South African National Defence Force. For us, that has been a well-traveled road, because in the past 30 years before that, South Africa did not have a national defense force that was owned by South Africans. And that is why, for me, it was significant that then, in April 1994, then in the months that followed, that we went out of our way as a nation to get into communities. I think Thaba Makwetla led one of the streams that went into villages to talk to people, to accept and to join as equals to the South African National Defence Force. And we thought, as we close off this era, as we begin to get ready for the next administration, it is important for us to say, yes, there have been hiccups, but we have come into our own as the National Defence Force 30 years later. We've done a lot of things that we are not enumerating there. One of them was to change the gender landscape, the racial landscape, the cultural landscape of the Defence Force, and that is important for us, because you cannot be the defenders of democracy if you are not actually part of that democracy and reflect the values of that democracy. We have had an interesting one. I don't think you who were in the defense when this happened, when the Muslim scarf, that debate, that was one of the very interesting eras in the defense, because it actually spoke to beliefs in the defense. And I think that we have done a number of good things. We're not perfect. So as we want to hand over, we look at just how representative we have been as the Defence Force. I think we've done well. I think we have done exceedingly well in gender representation. I think we have done well in challenging and opening up space for women in all of the arms of services. I think we've done very well in, when you look at what we have done on the international space. One, we have undertaken a number of missions, some reluctantly, some a must, but some of them have been such that we have had a national defense force that has had an all-round experience. We have also used this National Defence Force as a country to stand in the floor of the United Nations when we were calling for greater numbers of women's representativities in the peacekeeping forces, when the women were marching for their rights. The South African women in the armed forces were part of it, because we thought that we couldn't call for equality, recognition, peace, a space at the decision-making table without actually opening up the space. And that space starts off with those who guard the politicians, the defense. So I think that you are aware of the number of missions we have had. If you go into what we are saying there, the DRC, you know we're still there. We are still in Mozambique. We've been in CAR. We've been in Burundi. We had started off with a very quick one in Lesotho. We have also undertaken a number of disaster missions. Mozambique again comes up, Zimbabwe. And so we, on the international side, I think we have done well. What we do want to say on the domestic side is that we will continue to support the other departments on the domestic side if and when we are called upon. We support currently the police in dealing with the Zamazamas. We are on the borders with the police. We have had a new, I don't know whether it is, maybe call it a sister department, who is pushing and doing very well on the border side, the BMA. So we're doing very well there. But we're not leaving it only to South Africa. As ministers, we actually took a decision that we would engage with the neighboring, our counterparts, to begin to bring out the issues that trouble us. The fact that on our side we have, you remember we had an incident where our soldiers were shot at from across Zimbabwe, and when they shot back, our soldiers faced our local magistrates' courts and had to pay bails. And we have been taking this up because we think that as South Africans, sometimes we understand and we push things in a good direction, and sometimes we are too hard on ourselves, because when a South African soldier's life is endangered, they do have the right to defend themselves. They do have the right to defend the property, the lives of South Africans. So we've been taking up some of those matters. We are currently in the DRC, almost in two legs. The Sami DRC with Malawi and Tanzania. We are still there under MONUSCO, and MONUSCO will be drawing down. We are hoping that they are not drawing down too quickly, but we are also hoping that as they draw down, and as Sami DRC gets involved there, that there will also be dialogue. Because what is important is not that a war is won with weapons. It is also the problem that you might be leaving behind as you get out. We would not want to go back to the DRC. We have been there for a long time. So we will do everything we can physically, politically, to ensure that when peace is found, it is lasting. We want to say that currently, I think I have touched that we have been worried about security of communities. We are worried about what we see happening in our oceans. We were fortunate that so far 3 of our inshore patrol boats are in. We are hoping to acquire the outshore boats. That is to make sure that we police, protect our resources sufficiently on the oceans. On the, I think I have touched the support on the with the police. I will not go back to that. You will also remember that the National Defence Force played a very, very pivotal role in the outbreak, COVID. Not only did we send out a plane to fetch our kids from China, but we were deployed within communities to ensure that safety ensued. And yes, there were criticisms about how some instances people were handled. We acknowledged that. What is important is that when there is a disaster in this country, the Defence Force will be there. We also will be looking at how we managed the 2021 July unrest. We have learned lessons from that. We're thinking that that situation will not see itself repeating and finding us in the same conditions. So far, we are very clear that if should anything like July 2021 start, we will be better prepared. You will remember that it took us quite some time to reach our destinations. We are now in a better situation to say that should it happen, we will be ready. And South Africa does not need to worry. On disaster management, we have participated with our resources in both KwaZulu-Natal and the Northwest. I think we were also in the Eastern Cape, where we gave emergency relief. We are now in the process where we are going to be launching a structure. Firstly, we are at a point where we are planning to relook at the structure of the defense itself, to have a division, or whatever you will call it, that will deal and focus and be ready for any disaster eventuality. It shall be equipped, it shall train for, it shall be focused on disaster management. But at the same time, we are now in the process of having signed off and being ready to launch a disaster relief structure with COCTA and Treasury. You, ladies and gentlemen, will be invited. Is that in a week? In a week, we will be launching that structure with COCTA and National Treasury, which will ensure that whatever it is, we will not have to wait for weeks and bicker about which department must acquire stuff that is needed. We will also not be in the nasty situation we've been in, where in the KZN disaster, we had to strip the defense of its own tents to make sure that the communities there have, and spent days of worry just in case something broke out somewhere and we had taken out all our tents to go and alleviate what was happening in Natal. So we're planning better. We're looking at whether the structure of the National Defence Force as it is really responds to the needs of today and to the needs of tomorrow, which means that not only disasters, we're looking at the challenges we might have into the future, whether it is cyber, whatever it is in the AI atmosphere, we want to get ready. You are also aware that we participate with the Public Works Department in the building of the Welisizwe bridges. We had to take some flack when the speed of delivering the bridges was not what government was expecting. But we've also been instrumental as defense in the now dictating on the type, the size of the bridges, because we have looked at what was put And sometimes you look at a community and you think you can't be solving one problem only to create the other. And so the Wilisizwe bridges, we're very proud to be part of. On the matter that I suspect some of you have come here for, oh, I'm told I'm jumping the gun. We wanted to say to you that we will also be launching another structure as the Defense Force, which is coordinated with the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disability. That structure was informed by the need. Firstly, communities called on us, together with that Department of Women, Children, and Youth, to come up with some engagement for South Africa that would help alleviate youth unemployment, help create more skills, but empower youth to be more sustainable into the future, but also deal with what we saw as a need to break in and to help young people to find their footings better than reckless behavior that we're seeing, and therefore come in and help with matters of patriotism, matters of discipline. So we are very happy to inform you that we will soon be launching that structure, SANSI, together with Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. We are hoping that that will open up the doors. We have had quite a lot of interest to twin up with other countries on this one, and we are sure that we will be able to help youth get not job opportunities, get skills, and come and begin to serve their countries in whatever way they want to. As to the matter of the former Minister of Defense's application for legal assistance, the matter has received attention from ourselves. We then looked at the provisions in the law, whether or not we can accede or not to such a request. And we found that in terms of Section 6.2 of the State Legal Representation Policy, that we cannot help the former minister, and therefore we will not be doing so. We want to close off by saying that in the past 30 years, the Defense Force has really become a national asset. We hope it will continue to grow. We hope it will continue to do all those missions. We often forget that when there are disasters, it is to the defense that we call. When the other countries, the rescue missions, that as South Africa, we don't only just rescue our own citizens, that in the past, the very near past, we have also rescued citizens stuck in countries of conflict who are our neighbors. And therefore, one would hope that as the 7th administration kicks in, that there is a real rethinking about the budget allocation, but that budget rethinking will be helped by the process that we have started within the Defense Force. We have been busy with the review of the 2015 Defense Review. We have suggested some changes. We have suggested some shrinking and some enlargement of other services within the Defense Force. But we have also been able to present that to the head of state. We are working on the financials for that change. We are hoping that that will enable us to begin to look better after the people who look after us, the soldier. I think I should end there. Thank you very much for your patience.
Minister, thank you very much. I think my colleagues are very comfortable, so there wouldn't be any questions that are coming from the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we are here for, and you are please welcome to pose questions to us here, and we will take them in the batches of 3. We know the regime. You state your name and the institution you're from, and then your question. I see Heidi is really jumpy. Go ahead, Heidi.
No, I'm not jumpy. It's Heidi Joggers from ENCA. I just have a couple of questions, Minister. If you could please just elaborate a little bit for us about the deployments at power stations. Are you able to tell us for how much longer this is going to be? And clearly there's a need for it if it's still happening. I would also just like to ask if you could maybe again elaborate on what happened in Mozambique a couple of days ago in terms of that ambush. And then also, I know you've spoken about this before, but there have obviously been some reports around the treatment of members in the DRC and having to share pit latrines and not being in the best living conditions. Could you just also elaborate on that and tell us what's been done to sort that out if that was happening? Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Anyone else? The gentleman behind there.
Good day, Minister. Good day, everybody. Raymond from Netwerk 24. My colleague touched on a few points, but I just wanted to ask you, does it mean that then the deployment in the DRC and in Mozambique, does it come to an end I see one in July and one at the end of December? What did you anticipate of what's going to happen after? And then there's some that said that our defense force, they doesn't have the necessary resources to fulfill what they're doing. Do you agree with them, or yeah, that's all for now?
Thank you. Your name?
Oh no, there's some that said our defense force in the deployment missions in the DRC and in Mozambique, that they don't have the necessary resources.
I didn't get your name.
Raymond.
Raymond from? Netwerk. Oh, Netwerk. Thanks, Raymond. The lady there at the back.
Thank you. Good morning, Minister. My question is related to the deployment of the SNDF for the elections. Are they going to be deployed? Will they be sent to the voting stations? Because apparently there are political parties which are objecting to such a deployment.
Thank you. We didn't hear your name and where you're from.
Oh, my name is Molemo Motwa from SABC TV News.
Thank you, Molemo. Minister, we'll take this first round. It's 3 questions. Sorry, it's 3 colleagues, Heidi, Raymond, and Molemo.
Yes, we do have people deployed at power stations. Are we going to withdraw them soon? The reason some of them were, you will remember that the first people who were deployed from the defense were engineers. That was when a number of power stations were inexplicably not working, where we found wires, whatever. So the first batch was really engineers to go and help restore power. When it became obvious that in some power stations there were acts of sabotage, together with the police who were then deployed. We will continue to monitor, and it actually depends on the 2 ministers, Mandashe and Ramokgopa, whether the services of the National Defense Force continue to be needed. And when they no longer need the Defense Force, we would very happily want to withdraw our troops back into base. You also refer to the treatment of members in the DRC. I'm not sure I understand what treatment. There have been some issues around the arrival of abolition facilities. There have been issues which we have picked up about tents. But we need to say that you must remember that there are two, we have deployed in two actually in the DRC. You still have the people who were deployed in the initial deployment under the UN. You now have a deployment of SAMI DRC. How many have we deployed thus far? Just over 1,000 of the estimated 2,900, almost 3,000. What has happened is that as they went, you transport the equipment and the things that they need. But we do not do that. SADC has the responsibility to provide the logistics to transport. With what they have provided thus far, we have not been able to take everything at the same time to the DRC. So you take at a particular point in time what you can with the what has been put for your use. As the numbers increase, so do the stuff that you need to take for them. So is the question whether they have shelter? Yes, they have shelter. Is the question whether they have medical support? They do have medical support. The thing that was in the newspapers was the number of the toilets. I am sure that by now the number of toilets that have been taken to the DRC has increased. But even at that instance where we were told that 600 people are sharing 2 toilets, that was not absolutely true. The other question that has reached us from the media has been, are you able to provide fresh nutriments to the members? Yes, we are, because there are resources to buy directly the fresh produce in the DRC for our members. So there will be challenges. There is no mission that is perfect, but we will not sit back and not look after our children. Then there is a question that I have not responded to what happened in Mozambique. I think Hawk will. Then we have a question. You are asking whether the deployment in the DRC is coming to an end. Yes, part of it is coming to an end. The part that says MONUSCO is drawing down means that as MONUSCO draws down, and some of the countries have already left, but we are still there. What we will then decide is whether, as MONUSCO draws down, and it is not drawing down very rapidly, it is a process that is going to take some time. Our troops are still there. What it simply means is that they will be there under MONUSCO drawdown, but SAMI DRC has another element. Depending on how long and how complicated the matters are in the DRC, a decision will be then taken whether you transfer them back or you actually merge the 2 deployments. So far, we have not started withdrawing from the MONUSCO. We are keeping an eye on the developments. we are in fact increasing the deployment in the Sami DRC. And that is where the first question put us, how fast and how well we are making sure that the troops get what they need to do what they need to do on the ground in the DRC. Then the question was, people do not have the necessary resources in their deployments. Okay, I have a good Samaritan next to me. He will take that. Then Mulemo says, well, where are we in the elections? We are keeping an eye. We are on standby. The elections are a direct responsibility of whether or not South Africa exists peacefully and democratically, and that is why we are keeping an eye. If and when called upon, we will be able to come in, but we are hoping that everything will go according to plan. We are part of the security cluster. We keep on asking, requesting South Africans to please behave democratically, to allow these elections to be as peaceful as we usually have them. And therefore, as defense, we're just keeping an eye. But should anything arise, we will be able to defend the sovereignty of our country and the free and fair election that we expect as citizens to get. We as defense, we will not, even though the minister belongs to a political party, we will not take sides with any party existing or emerging. And that is why it is important for us to keep out of the fray, but to make sure that every South African has the right to express their vote in the manner they wish. Yeah, I think.
Thank you, Minister. Heidi, your question around what happened in Mozambique. It so happened that we were doing a logistical run between Mukumi and our base. Now, between Mukumi and our base, it's a distance between the two places. When we were coming back from Mukumi with our logistics, we then were confronted by the, do you call them rebels? The insurgents, yes, that's the correct word. We came into contact with the insurgents, and I'm sure you'll be proud that the South African troops repelled that attack with ease. And of course, we did get support from our base that wasn't far from there. So we repelled, and all our troops went back to base safe. We didn't even have an injury. We did, though, lose 2 Caspers because of the, they went into a place where they had put up spikes and what I would call homemade, should I say, not bombs, but they destroyed the tires of those Caspers, but we were able to retrieve those Caspers and take them back to base. So that's what happened there. But we didn't have anyone injured, nor did we lose any troops there. Everybody was back to base. The question around necessary equipment and resources, Raymond. Raymond, when you project your forces, you don't do it once off. You project your forces in phases. So as you project your forces and they increase, you also increase the resources that are needed. So it's not a once off. For the next 5-6 years, if we're there, we will keep on projecting the forces and the equipment as the needs arise. And we project the equipment together with the number of troops that are on the ground in a planned way. We just don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, we need 10 trucks or 10 this or that. It's according to the plan that has been put in place. So our projecting is a phased in. equally, when we withdraw in phases so that we know exactly the equipment that we've taken there is all accounted for. So the news reports that you have had are contrary to how we deploy. We don't deploy once off. Thank you. Another round of questions. The gentleman here.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. My name is Sam Bosch from Defence Web. I just want to clarify, you mentioned SADC would be responsible for the logistics. We have seen press reports of Russian aircraft, Ilyushin aircraft flying in to the DRC, flying into Waterkloof, obviously taking equipment. Are we paying for that, or is SADC paying for that?
Thank you, Sam. The cameraman there at the back.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabi Chokweni from SABC News. I'm a cameraman, and we move around a lot. And we find that in the townships particularly, I think there's a lot of young people into drugs, like they call nyaupes and all of that. So I've always been asking myself, isn't there like some intervention maybe the military could do just to alleviate a bit of that scourge, which is kind of wiping the young ones and destroying some of the townships? Because it's really bad. It's actually escalating to the villages now, whereby it's just drugs and nyaupe. And how does the military defense, uproot all of that? Because I'm sure there's some information where these things come from, and the COVID-19, the work done by the military defense during COVID-19 was commendable. They were there in the streets and people stayed locked down particularly. And I was thinking, how do you take that formation and kind of deploy it to the townships directly, and maybe people will stay away from the stuff, and less people will be affected by these criminals, which is caused by drugs, which is the main kind of route. That's mine. Thanks.
Thank you, Gabi. Any other taker before we respond? Going on. This is the last round, unless somebody has a follow-up question. Thank you. Minister, over to you.
On the yes, the SADC is responsible for the logistics. They are paying for the transportation. Therefore, we are not paying. I'm not sure how they procure, but they are responsible. So we're not paying anything for that. On the second question, you're right. The project that I'm saying we will be launching seeks to address that, seeks to rescue the kids, the young men, the young women, seeks to get them gainfully employed, seeks to help them identify their potentials, and to hopefully help them identify niches and get finances for them to do what they can do. It's not going to solve all the problems of the young people in the country. It is a project that we will enter into. For now, it has been the Department of Women, Youth, and ourselves. But we are hoping that higher education will be part of us, that social development will be part of us, and that already gives us enough muscle to be able to get professionals involved, get the resources involved. We are hoping that we will also be attracting serious international partners. We do know that there are countries who are just waiting to jump in with us. And so with the South African youth, and we're hoping it will not just be the youth in the townships, it will be all our young people. And that is important for us because you can't solve one section of your national problem. Because if you do, and you leave the others out, you're not helping them to merge and to grow the country together. We must fight with everything we can as South Africans to reunite ourselves back into the nation that Madiba left. Because if we continue the way we are, we're going right back to standing in different corners, and that is not good for the young people. So we are hoping that SANSI will help us bring everybody together, get them hard skills, get them economically and politically upskilled. So we're doing that. Those were the only two questions that we had.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for responding to our invitation, and thanks for this conversation. We've come to the close of our interaction. We thank you very, very much. Thank you. Minister, thank you very much.
Journalist, for spoiling your Sunday lunch. Thank you very much.
I'm told you are invited for a small little snack behind before you leave. Thank you very much.